Hi, I'm Josh Smalley, finalist of the Great British Bake Off and scientist and science communicator here at the University of Leicester. Today I'm with the Medical Research Foundation to talk a little bit about some of the research that they fund, but we're going to be talking about it through the vehicle of baking. I'm here today with Dr Lavinia Paternoster from the University of Bristol, who is doing research investigating the link between skin conditions and mental health through a Medical Research Foundation funded project. We're going to make some cupcakes to help explain her research in a little bit more detail. Do you want to crack the eggs?
I can try.
Let's get it. No pressure, but this is always the best bit on camera, is the egg cracking.
Okay. So I'm Lavinia Paternoster, I'm from the University of Bristol and I'm a genetic epidemiologist. I have spent the last 15 years focused on the genetics of eczema and other skin conditions. My project with the Medical Research Foundation is all about looking at why there seems to be a link between skin conditions and mental health. So there does seem to be a link between those two things, but we don't know what the reason for it is, and that's what my research is hopefully going to help explain. This particular project, we're focused on eczema and acne, and they're two skin conditions that are particularly affecting people earlier in their life. So eczema affects a lot of young people, children. Some people grow out of it during childhood, but for some people it continues into adulthood. Eczema is characterised more by a dry, itchy rash, normally in like the creases of the body. 3/4 of people that are affected by eczema report that it can impact their mental health. Some of those will go on to have a clinical diagnosis of something like depression or anxiety. So it's a huge problem for people that suffer from these skin conditions. And acne is something that affects a lot of people during puberty, so something that happens during adolescence, and that is more characterised by spots on the face, chest and back areas. And those spots can be anything from pimples up to sort of large pustules under the skin. And they affect a huge numbers of people. People that we've spoken to with some of these conditions talk about there being a real stigma around some of these conditions. So they may be more impacted by bullying. They may feel they need to cover themselves up or kind of shy away from social interaction. So they talk about social isolation, and that might be one of the reasons why these kind of conditions can lead to problems like mental health.
Yeah, and with things like the pressures of today on the back of things like COVID, with the prevalence of social media and things like that now, I imagine that also brings in lots of mental health.
Yeah, I think mental health is problems are just increasing generally. We're hoping that our research can kind of try to understand why these things are connected, and therefore how we can design interventions that then can improve mental health for people with these skin conditions. So we use a technique called Mendelian Randomization, which uses genetic data and is a statistical technique to try and unpick what the causal relationships are between different traits. And that's what I'm going to use the cupcakes to demonstrate later.
Excellent. Mendelian Randomization, I need to remember that one. That sounds fancy. This is the hard, messy work to start off with, is just getting our batter made without making too much of a mess. So what kind of things will explain like the link between the skin conditions and mental health?
There's been previous research that shows that there is a connection, but correlation isn't causation, so you don't know whether the skin conditions are causing the mental health outcomes. Being stressed is thought to be a trigger for eczema, so maybe it's people having mental health issues that can cause the skin conditions. Maybe it's totally unconnected. So some things that might explain the link are things like having these skin conditions can lead to problems around stigma and social isolation. People with skin conditions also, or particularly eczema, have problems with sleep because they're up at night scratching their skin, and sleep has been linked to mental health outcomes. So it might be that part of the reason is that people with eczema aren't getting enough sleep, and that's leading to mental health difficulties, or it may be other things. So that's what we're going to be investigating, and trying to tease those things apart and trying to work out what are the reasons these things are connected then tells us a bit more about how to intervene to improve these.
All the data for this, is this something that you collect? Is it like stored in a big database somewhere?
Yeah, so I mean it's data that has come from huge studies from all around the world.
All over the world,
so some of them may include sort of millions of participants that have given their blood sample, and their genetic code has been sequenced from that. And so these really huge studies have been conducted that look at the link between genes and certain conditions, and then we bring all of those together and analyse them on our supercomputer in Bristol.
That must be so much data to unpick. How do you know where to start? So what insights have you had from people that are living with these skin conditions?
Yeah, so we've spoken to people that have experience of eczema and acne. So one of the things that some of these people have told us is that they've never been asked about their mental health in all the times that they've had consultations about their skin conditions, and that seems quite surprising given the statistics of how common mental health conditions are for these particular people. Yeah, they've definitely given us some great ideas for where we should look for what might be the reasons for the connection between skin conditions and mental health, for sure.
Right, so our cakes are baked and now cooled, and they're ready to decorate. So we're going to punch out the middle. I'm going to give you that task. I've made a passion fruit curd, which we're going to inject into the middle, and then we're going to pipe some buttercream on top before we then decorate to help explain in detail the links between skin conditions and mental health using these edible wafer toppers. So if you just go in like just down a little way like that, you should be able to just give it a twist and it should just come out. And then you can just...
Okay, so you only put it in a little bit.
Yeah, and then just pop them out. And then those ones are really great just eating just like a little snack.
Yes, that doesn't count because it's just the bit you've taken out.
So does having a family history of eczema mean that you'll definitely get it yourself?
Having a family history of eczema definitely puts you at increased risk, but there are so many factors at play, so many different genes, and you'll inherit those somewhat randomly from your parents. It puts you at increased risk, but doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get the condition.
Okay. So I think there's like the maybe misconception that eczema only occurs in childhood. Is that the case or not?
So it's much more common in childhood, and most people will find that it develops early in childhood, but it can definitely persist into adulthood, and equally some adults might find that they suffer from eczema for the first time. So no, it's absolutely not just a condition of childhood, but that's where it's most common.
So we're nearly ready for the big build. We've got a passion fruit curd, which I'm going to get you to inject into the middle whilst I decorate with some buttercream. And whilst we do that and we approach putting on the edible toppers, I imagine you've not baked your research before?
No, this is a new one for me to be baking my science.
Now we've done this, we'll be inspired. Hopefully we can inspire our respective departments, so maybe we can do a research bake-off, can't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
One at Leicester and one at Bristol. The last thing to do now is to put on our edible wafer toppers, which we've got printed out, and I think Lavinia's going to talk about what we've got printed out and what we're going to stick on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start with, we've got two to represent acne and eczema, so our skin conditions.
Yeah, wonderful.
Do you want to put those on?
One each to put at the back.
And we have the ones representing mental health and neurodevelopmental conditions.
Put those on then. And then what's these ones?
So these are representing other factors that could be important, so environmental factors and treatments.
Sleep.
Sleep, yeah. And finally, we've got our DNA helix representing the genetic data that we're going to use.
Ah, wonderful.
Okay, so we know that mental health conditions are more common in people with skin conditions, but we don't know the reason why. So it could be that the skin conditions are causing the mental health outcomes. There could actually be the reverse relationship in that there's something about the mental health conditions that is causing the skin condition, or there could be no direct relationship between the two, and the observation that we see is entirely explained by some other factors which we call confounders. So these are health and environmental factors that influence both skin conditions and mental health, and could imply that there's absolutely no direct causal relationship between the two. Finding out the exact nature of this relationship is really important if we want to think about intervening to improve mental health, because there's no point intervening on skin conditions if actually the relationship is going via other factors. So we use genetic data because genetics aren't influenced by things like the environment. We've identified genetic variants that are associated with the skin conditions, and so we use these genetic variants as a proxy for the skin conditions that we're interested in. And then essentially, if we see an association between these genetic variants and the mental health outcomes, we can assume that it's going in this direction. So skin conditions are causing the mental health outcomes. We can also test the reverse direction, as we have genetic variants that are associated with the mental health outcomes. And again, we can test if there's any relationship between those genetic associations and the skin conditions. And if there is, that suggests that things might be going in the reverse direction. Once we've identified which is the likely causal direction, we can then investigate what might be mediating or explaining the relationship a bit more. So there's some options here. So it might be that the treatments that you receive when you have a skin condition could be the reason that you get increased mental health outcomes, or it could be something like sleep. So if people suffering from these conditions are up all night scratching, they might get less sleep, and that might be one of the reasons there's increased mental health in those individuals. So we can repeat the process just with 2 different genetic variants. So if we have genetic variants associated with our skin condition and then other genetic variants associated with our mediator, we can do this whole thing as a 2-step process to identify what might be mediating that relationship.
So thanks to Lavinia for today, helping us to break down some of the complex elements of science research, but doing it into baking form. And we've done that today for the Medical Research Foundation's Research Bakers.
Thanks so much for having me in the Science Kitchen
Pleasure.
today, Josh. And it's been, a real challenge and really fun thinking about how to, represent my research in the form of baking. And I'd encourage more of you to do the same.